Fayetteville State University, and head coach Kenny Phillips. Preseason picked 4th overall, 3rd in the CIAA Southern Division. They were the 6th best scoring team in the CIAA last year, averaging about 26 points a game. They gave up over 32 points a ball game, but #1 in time of possession. I know you were proud of that. And you were also the best rushing, the 4th best rushing team in rushing defense. They will open their season on September 1st versus the Eagles of North Carolina Central University. Preseason pick #3 in the CIAA South. Now it is 12. Is it 12 years now?
I quit counting.
You quit counting. It is 12, 11th or 12th year, one of them, Fayetteville State's head coach, Mr. Kenny Phillips.
How y'all doing this afternoon?
How are you doing? That's a better question.
Football starts in 2 weeks. I'm doing pretty good because we'll get back to doing the things that we are made to do as football coaches. And this time of year is always exciting to come up here to the CIAA and watch what Coach Faison do with this fine university they have here and put on a great venue here for us to come out. And some of these guys are going to talk a little bit more junk than I'm going to talk. I'm just going to sit here and listen to you.
No, I'm just asking the questions, and you need to depend on me. Because my question to you is the bounce back. I mean, you know, scheduling can be a good demon or a bad demon sometimes. Last year, you guys off to a little rocky start, and I was worried about you. I saw you in the game, and you didn't smile, you didn't speak to me, and I thought it was me. And then, you know, you're able to win the game every game. You're talking to me. So scheduling, you didn't get off to a great start, but you ended pretty strong. You know, a game I know at the end of the year you were disappointed. Talk about how we fixed the problems from last year to this year.
Well, if you have talked to Dr. McLean, our wonderful AD over at Fayetteville State, he'll tell you this time of year Coach Phillips don't smile much anyway. So it was nothing.
This was September though.
This was nothing against you. So it's one of those things with me. You know, it's our scheduling has always been that I've always felt as head football coach that if you can play tough competition in your preseason game, it builds for the tough competition you're going to play in the CIAA. And last year was a year of, I heard Coach from Bowie State say he redshirted 18 freshmen. I think I played 18 freshmen last year. So it was a year for us to get some young guys in there. And when we had to play those young guys, the biggest thing with playing tough schedules like that, we started out the season with a bad injury to Marcos Escobar, who we got back. He didn't play the first 3 games. And then we ended the season with the injury to Andre Lyles. So we were a young football team that had to throw some guys in some situations that normally we wouldn't have to because of injuries.
Speaking of a young team, you had to eventually go with a young quarterback in Chauncey Concepcion, who had a nice season as the year went on. Talk about Chauncey and the other guys on the offensive side of the ball.
Well, the thing that you asked earlier about how do you bounce back, you know, you go out and recruit and you take the guys that you have on your campus and you try to mold them into the championship football teams that you had in the past. Of course, you can't compare each team with the team you had a year ago because they're not the same football team. But the things that you try to instill in those guys, if you're going to play in the championship game, you got to work at it. And the thing with Chauncey, he's an exciting football player. He's a scary football player to offenses, to defenses, and he's a scary football player to the head football coach. Because when you're playing with young guys like that, you don't know what they're going to do because a lot of times they revert back to what they did in high school. And when you're in college, it's nowhere compared to what you did in high school. You can run past some people in high school, but when you get to the collegiate level, everybody on defense can run. But I think he's got a chance to be a very good football player in this league if he continues to work.
You had an offensive line. Larry McDonald was the anchor. He's no longer there, but other guys on the offensive line that you can expect to get some good information out of this year.
Well, that's the great thing about our football team. We lost on our offensive side of football a year ago. Larry McDonald was a senior, a 4-year starter for us. We've got 4 of those 5 guys back on the offensive line, and we have both our tight ends back, both quarterbacks back, the running backs back. So I feel like we've got a chance to be a very good offensive football team. Of course, we had to hire a new offensive coordinator because our coach Portier retired a year ago. We hired Mark Mejia out of Arizona, a young man that I've known for years now, and I think he's done a great job in this short period of time. He's been there to, to mold the offense and what we're going to try to do as a football team this year. But on the offensive line, which shocked me a little bit, and I'm with the coach from Bowie State, that, you know, we've got some guys that have been. William Hunt's been a 3-year starter for us on the offensive line there at Fayetteville State. William is 6'5", 315. We have Desmond Robert, who played last year after sitting out a couple of years. He's 6'4", 2'3", 305. Jonathan Gray was a true freshman that played for us on the open end tackle. He's 6'3", 300. And then we have Hunter McClure, who is right at 6'1", 300 pounds. I think our offensive line is one of those positions that each year, as a football coach, you always try to make sure that you take care of your offensive line and your defensive line. And I think our offensive line has a chance to be one of the best offensive line in the league.
We got 140 online viewers right now. Again, we thank them for their contributions. Coach Fan wants to know, how do you feel about being picked third in your division, and what is the competition going to be like in the Southern Division?
Wow. Picking third in the division this time of year, I tell the guys, it's a prediction. And what it shows is that even though we struggled a little bit last year as a football team, and I wrote this down when I was sitting back there, you know, still the coaches in this league still have some respect for Fayetteville State, even though we struggled a little bit last year. And I wrote down that, you know, respect is something that's earned. And over the years, we've been where the coach from Livingstone was. We've been next to the bottom. We've been at the top, we've been in the middle. At this point in the season, it doesn't matter where you start. It always comes down to where you end up at the end of the football season. And, you know, where they pick us is fine with me. I think it's going to motivate our guys to get up and do what we need to do to get back to the championship game. And when you talk about the Southern Division, wow. You know, we open up with North Carolina Central, then we play a tough UNC Pembroke football team, and then we have Elizabeth City, and then we go into the regular schedule. You know, the side that we're on, nothing against, you know, the coaches over on the other side, but when you talk about Winston-Salem State, you talk about Shaw University, you talk about St. Augustine College, you know, you're looking at 3 football teams that you definitely going to have to line down, and you're going to have to play for 60 minutes. It may have to go longer if we go overtime.
You've seen a definite competitive balance shift over the years you've been there, where maybe schools in the South weren't always the strongest, but looks like now, every Saturday, you got to be ready to play, don't you?
All the time. I mean, that's one of the things we stress in practice is about preparation, is that if you're going to win on Saturday, you have to prepare not in August, not in June, not in July. You have to start in January. And then you get into your summer months. The last 2 months are the months that are going to determine how you do in September, because when we get to camp, we come in on August the 7th, we practice. We have our first practice on August the 9th. We start classes on August the 16th. We don't have the same amount of time as a Division I school to prepare our football team to get ready for a game. So what your students do, athletes do in June, July is determine how well you're going to do in August. So they've been working real hard there on campus, and we're looking for an exciting year this year.
You mentioned Marcos Escovel was the injured part of the season, came back strong, but you gave up defensively about 31 points a ball game. I know a couple of those games were just crazy games that got out of hand. But one of our fans wanted to know is, what are the biggest defensive challenges the Broncos will face in this upcoming season?
Well, the biggest thing is always at our level is depth. We have 3 young men that one didn't play for us a year ago. This is what we talked about. And we have Matagi, Weatherspoon, and we get a young man back who was out last year with concussion, and Derek Redmond, who played the year before. So we have 3 experienced defensive linemen returning for us this year, and the problem is depth-wise. You know, who's behind those guys? So you have to kind of finagle your way through and make sure you don't overwork those guys, and make sure you try to get them through the football season. But I think defensively, we return on defense. I think we have 14 guys that played for us a year ago on defense, and I think that coming back defensively this year, these guys will understand what it takes to play championship football. And giving up 31 points a game, you know, this is me. We need to figure out how to get these stats straight when they talk about defenses giving up 31 points a game, because there are some games when you go into a football game, you know you're a football team, but when your offense give up 21 points, your defense give up 3, it still goes down as your defense giving up 24 points in that football game.
I just write the
numbers
numbers
down
that
way.
Hey, I'm not
but like I said, We are a football team, but, you know, I thought we didn't play very well as a defense last year. We gave up too many big plays last year, and that's one of the things we're going to stress coming into camp this year. I look back at the Carson Newman game. We played them on a Thursday, and I knew what we was getting into with that football team, trying to prepare for what they do. And then we play Elizabeth City, and Coach Tillett, you know, talked about moving earth. He came in and moved that turf around a little bit with those big guys he had up on, you know. And then we play Winston-Salem State, and we go into that football game. We give up, I think it was 6 or 7 touchdowns that were 30 yards or more. And that's unorthodox when you talk about Fayetteville State football on defense.
Exactly. And speaking of defense, I know Joshua Scales is one of the guys that you're looking forward to having a great season. But our fans wanted to know, who are some other big impact players that Fayetteville State will have this year?
Well, I thought that, you know, coming out of spring football up front, Witherspoon, a defensive lineman, a defensive end that played for us a year ago, coming off sitting out, I thought that, you know, coming out of the spring, he showed us why he was a 5-star athlete. Coming out of high school, we have a target who plays the other defensive end, who I think is, whenever he decides that he is going to play football, everybody talk about the kid up at Bowie State and the kid up at Lincoln College, and defensively what they can do. This kid is probably one of the most talented football players we've coached at Fayetteville State. And then when you look at the linebacker spot, the position I coach, we've got 4 guys that played for me a year ago that's returning that I think now understands what it takes to be a linebacker in the CIAA. This might be the first year in a long time we haven't had a linebacker preseason all league.
No questions from the fans. Media, do you have a question? If not, Coach Phillips, as always, hope I get a smile out of you sometime during the season. I'll try.
We'll try.
We'll try.
We'll work on
We'll
this
try.
now.
Good to see you as always. Kenny Phillips, the Broncos of Fayetteville State University.